Yeah, we want to welcome everybody. 25-year veteran,
Oh,
s- staple of the Indies. One of the guys who just been doing it forever and done it everywhere. Mr. Chance Prophet. So welcome to the show. Appreciate you.
hi.
Love the background as well for all those looking at
Uh,
Yeah,
the live feed.
that's
He's
to
got his
disguise
many,
my
many
basement
faces.
too.
Oh yeah.
nice. That's awesome. Very cool. So, I don't know if David and Pablo got a chance to watch it, but I checked out the Grappalaccia documentary that PBS did just
Yeah.
recently, and it was really cool, man. I saw it because Casey King was sharing it around, and Casey's a great guy. I actually had him work for me in Indianapolis a couple years ago. Well,
I like him a lot.
yeah, he's a
I
good
like
guy.
to stab him. I like to stab him a lot.
Yeah, nice, nice, nice. Oh, that's gonna lead me to something else that I wanted to talk to you about, but what was it like being featured in that documentary? And if you want to tell people about it a little bit and whatnot, that'd be cool.
Yeah. Grappalaccia was put together by Troy Rankin over at West Virginia Public Broadcasting. Um, he got a hold of us about a year to a year and a half ago and wanted to feature a lot of us, mainly the hotbeds in West Virginia at the current time. Um, and he featured a lot of my students, which was crazy. And he's like, "Yeah, we want to talk to you." I was like, "Oh, you want to talk to Grandpa too? That's cool."
Nice, nice. So, I got a question that I have to ask you about, and then I'm gonna kind of let Pablo and David ask a couple questions too. I do interviews a lot on my other podcasts, so I'm kind of an interviewer, if you will. So I have questions in mind, but back in I want to say it was like 2010, maybe.
Oh
Um,
man.
yeah, uh, I was living with Apollo Star,
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
and yeah, and he was out at war, and you guys had a match and he came home and was so freaking excited about that match because he never does that style. You
Yeah.
guys wrestled all over that freaking building, man. And
Yeah.
Q never goes out in the crowd. He never does. I mean, I don't know how much you
He's
know
a
about
mask.
him,
He's
but
a
yeah,
locked up.
he's in the ring. But he was like, man, I've never really done a match like this before. It was so fun. I want to work Chance Profit all the time. I don't know if you guys ever got a chance to work together again, but he was super
Well,
proud of that match, man.
I was gonna say you did Chance, you did beat Apollo Star for the championship like maybe a few years later, no? If you said it
Mm,
was 2010, 2012, what you beat him for the NWA
Oh no,
heavyweight
Apollo
with in
never
that
had the
three-way?
NWA belt, but I
No,
wish.
it was
yeah.
a
Yeah.
three-way. You, Drew Skills, and Apollo
Oh, that was
Star.
HWA, the
Yeah.
like
HWA, okay,
version
right on.
three.
Hmm.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. It
Yeah,
was good to get back together with them, but like that match at War was just crazy fun. And
yeah.
he's a good dude. He's a really good dude, and
He's
he can
literally my
go.
best friend, man. But yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That was he was so proud of that match, man. And I just so when you go into a match with someone who has a style like Apollo, where it's more mat based and he kind of likes to keep it in the ring,
Hmm.
how much convincing does it take to get them to do what you do, or do you just kind of take over? And I mean, how does that work?
It's usually not too hard because I love, to be completely honest, if I had my druthers, I would be a mat-based guy, and I like grappling. I love catch. I've done some MMA back in probably about the same time frame.
Yeah,
Um, so I really like grappling. I was a high school wrestler, but whenever we can take what's in the ring and get it even closer to the fans, give them a taste of danger, like it makes it that much more real to them. So it's really not that hard to convince them, especially once they hear a pop of someone doing similar stuff.
sure. Cool, cool, cool. Cool. And one more thing that I'm gonna there was a faction, right, that I believe started in war.
Yeah.
And then you guys took it like all over the freaking country.
Hmm.
Um, do you want to talk about that a little bit? Because that was a really cool time. Like,
Yeah, with Crimson,
yeah, yeah, yeah. And then Jason
Crimson
Gordon ended up
Glory.
joining up. Yeah,
We had Kaz Hayashi in there, I think, maybe. If I'm wrong, it was one of
Hey,
the Michigan branch, but like
yeah.
we went all over the place. Crimson started it, and him and Gory were first, and then they incorporated me in, and we just went to town. Like we had fun times. We had Gangrel in there at one point.
Ooh.
It was fun.
Yeah. Awesome.
So
All
a
right.
nice group of characters right there. I wanted to ask something though, because your resume is very star-studded, and you fought John Moxley, Nigel McGuinness, Christopher, the now retired Christopher Daniels, AJ Styles. You've been everywhere. What would you say was, and quite obviously, greats like the Juggulator, but
Yeah.
who would you say was the person that you enjoyed getting in there the most with and mixing it up?
Um, I wish I could do Moxley all over again because he's just electric.
Mhm.
Um, to be completely honest, that match I shouldn't have been in because I got hit head on that week and I was still kind of out of it. And he's like, "Oh, brother, don't worry about it. We'll be fine." And that's the first time I'd ever met the dude.
Mhm.
He was still working a 9 to 5. He came in, had like a polo on, look all super just like depressed and down, and he was just, "Yeah, I'm here." Like over in the corner, I was like, "He's gonna go to sleep. He's gonna go to sleep before we get out there." I go out in the ring and I'm still like, I'm touch and go on this. I'm like, man, one bad bump and I'm gonna be done. All of a sudden his music hits. He's electric, and I'm like, oh crap,
Just
my
yeah,
got to turn the worker boots on. Yeah,
that's nice.
he
It's cool. It's funny because just seeing him in promos now, I kind of see the same thing. He's able to
it's
be a
it's
little
it's funny
chill and
because
then
I was backstage at IPW once, and this was when Moxley was their champ, and he
yeah,
was literally just sitting on the floor in the hallway.
yeah, just
Like,
over
just
in the corner,
low,
not in the
legs
chair.
spread out,
low
just sitting in
key,
the hallway on the floor. I was like, all right,
low
right on.
key.
Like
It's pretty
I
nuts.
could be here. I
Yeah.
could take a nap. I could wrestle.
Yeah,
I don't care.
yep.
Yep.
And then he gets out there and it's just like snap. It's crazy. Yeah.
One thing I also wanted to ask is that it seems like you're a fan of or an avid painter.
Yeah.
Seems like, and obviously when it comes to your in ring and your face paint and stuff like that, what do you feel like they're synonymous with each other? Art and wrestling, this is pretty much hand in hand. But which came first for you? Would you say?
Um, I'd say the art piece came first because I was heavily involved in art all the way growing up, and then actually I've got a graphic design bachelor's and master's, so it's just a part of my everyday life. But like the painting aspect of it, it's always been something that I got into. It's a really good release. But then once you get into wrestling and see how we piece everything together, it's like, oh, this is literally painting by numbers, like making everything work. It really is a true art form.
It's a beautiful thing, because people don't see it. Like I would say the same thing about when I used to be a boxer, is that boxing is it's very much artwork because all you see in the untrained eye is just, people swinging, but you don't
Yeah.
realize what goes into it. The fact that they had to position their body to get there, their footwork, their angles and stuff like that. It was just nice to see that, and obviously there's certain people like Jeff Hardy, he does his face paint. He still does, and he puts a lot of time and effort into that. But it's cool to see you have a master's in graphic design.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a wonderful thing, and
It's
it's amazing that you got both of them to work together.
yeah. And like my mom used to joke, she's like, "What are you gonna do with this degree? You're like busy wrestling doing this." I was like, "I'm gonna design some really cool merch."
Heck, there you go.
And
There you go.
that's a lot of the business,
Yeah.
and quite obviously you have some of the best, I would say some of the best looks when you're in the as far as like your outfits matching with your, you know, was the art, did it have to do with the kind of match you were in? Like what would be the around the thinking for the face paint? Like was it a certain like feeling that you got for the match, or was it just like how you felt during the at the time?
Well, most of the time, like whenever I first developed like that visual that's currently what I do,
Mhm.
um, it came from me getting to be so weathered and just like I'm knowing that I'm going to have to be vicious to stay over. So I'm like, I have to make my visual match my personality towards my fight or my match. But back in like when I first started, I always wanted to paint my face. Wanted to like Sting was a real hero. Actually, Muda was the big hero,
Mm.
and Vampiro. Um, like I loved watching Sting and Muda, but I watched him for Muda. Um, but to be completely honest, but like when I first started, I was doing a little bit of that. Had some Japanese like kanji that I would put on my head, and everyone's
Mhm.
like, "Oh, you don't know what you're doing putting that on there." I was like, "Yeah, I do. This is cool." And then evolved, and I was like, I can't be looking the way I look and try to appropriate Japanese culture. It just doesn't work. So I can still appropriate their culture and work as far as ring work, but I just had to get more into my visuals. Plus, I'm a big comic book nerd. I love the Joker. I love Venom. I just was like, let's put them back together.
I was wondering because I seen that, and I also saw that you did a portrait of the Joker. I believe
Yeah,
it was on Instagram. But I could tell that that connection between the Ravens version Sting
yeah,
and obviously Venom. I could definitely see with that picture on the right.
yeah.
Also, is there anything you want to plug as far as things that you're working on with business maybe, or are there certain?
I have my school that we've moved around a couple of different times. We've got a little home in Chesapeake, Ohio. It's called the Power Slam Academy. I got about 10 to 12 students, and they're knocking out the park. Um, you can visit powerslamacademy.com, and then anybody wants information, you can hit me up. I get more DMs on my regular social media on Instagram, on Facebook than I do there, but anybody can hit me up, talk about that.
Beautiful.
Yeah,
Do you, do you have any do you have any students who've either graduated recently who are in the class that you're teaching right now who you think people should keep a lookout for?
Troy Parker, number one. Um, he's working in CZW on the
Yeah, Troy
regular.
Parker. Troy Parker's good. Yeah. So,
He's a
didn't mean to
beast.
interrupt you, but he's good. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm super proud that he came in ready to go. Like I'm like, are you ready to do drills? He's like, yeah, I'm ready to do this. I think the first couple of days he got a busted nose. He's a tough dude. I love him to death. But like he came in ready to go. He's a big student and a big proponent of strong style in New Japan. And he's got goals. He sets them and then he keeps going. Um, Micah, Mika, she's a female worker. She came from
Okay.
us. She's amazing. She's got work ethic like nobody else.
I've seen her
Um,
too, man. I've seen some of your students and didn't even know. Okay.
yeah, yeah.
Mm.
And we got Tyler Rosfeld. He's making waves. He's starting to get out of our scene, which I encourage them. I'm like, please do not become a West Virginia wrestler. Be a professional wrestler. Um,
Yeah.
I hate when people get stuck in one area.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
It is West Virginia. Yeah.
Yeah,
Speaking of
West Virginia has some pretty good wrestling going on down there. It seems like though Brent goes to a lot of shows and he's always telling us about it. It seems like some of the promoters down there bring in some pretty good names like Matthew Justice and Jake something and
yeah.
some guys like that. So
Matt and I go back for a bit too. Back when VOW was a thing up in Connellsville,
sure.
PA, we
Yeah.
connected up there. We become good friends. It's like a family reunion every time I see him. It's like, oh, so what's going on with? He's like, what's going on with all your 12 kids? I'm just like, oh, bro.
Yeah, I'm glad that Matt's getting to do some stuff in MLW, man, because he's been talented for a long time, and
Yeah,
MLW is one of the bigger indie promotions now. So hopefully people are getting to see him because he's been good for a long time. I remember the Iron Justice team that he was doing with Gregory Iron forever ago, and they were good back then. So
a
that's
lot of
cool.
people forget that he was in NXT. Like he was
Yeah,
like Florida Championship, the whole deal, and
yeah.
just bounced out of there and just kept trucking.
Yeah.
Which seems
on.
like it's the rubric of people that are talented. Like they don't just try to pigeonhole themselves into one thing. They get themselves around. And yeah, I've been seeing Matthew Justice a lot of different ones. I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure he was at the MLW that last show, and then he was also I've seen him on a bunch of different cards lately. And
Yeah, I think
GCW
MLW
card.
didn't MLW just put him in a pretty big faction or something like
Yeah.
that, I thought. Yeah.
He was talking a little bit about that the last
Yeah.
time we were around. It was at a Pro Wrestling Conquest show. And he's like, yeah, they're going to put me in a more prominent role, and I'm like, dude, you deserve it. Like
Oh, yeah.
he's been at it almost as long as I have.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm, mm,
So
yeah.
I saw an interview earlier with one of Seth Rollins' students, and she was talking about how they had to do like a CrossFit class as
Yeah.
part of their training. Like, how important is the conditioning aspect of the training? Because I know some trainers don't emphasize that. They just emphasize teaching kids how to put the matches together and the moves and whatnot. Like, how much do you focus on the conditioning when you're training?
It's if it's not 50% of the class, it's 60 to 75%. Because if you can't go in that and have a full gas tank around the 15-minute mark, you're letting everybody down and yourself.
Mhm.
When I first broke in, I was trained by guys like you're talking about, really great people.
Yeah.
They didn't stress the fitness aspect of it. They were like, "Oh, if you want to be a body guy, you got to get on the gas." I'm like, not really. You can just work out. Work out, eat clean, which that's unheard of. But we like after I think it was 2007, Dave Marquez gave me an option to come out when I was part of the NWA. He said we could go out to San Bernardino. They'd set me up in their dojo and train there, and it completely shook everything. I was like, this is how it's done.
Yeah.
So lucha training, squats out the rear end, like 120 jump squats, and they're like, oh, this is light compared to what we normally do at New Japan. Because it was like New Japan's like 500 squats to warm up before you get to your rolls, and it's just
Yep.
and everyone comes in. I love the tryouts because I love to blow people's mind. They're like, you want us to do what?
Pause.
50
Mhm.
push-ups, 50 these, 50 this. And they're like, and now what? And I'm like, now you do your rolls. And they're like, do my rolls? I'm dead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to die before you're really alive. That's what I
That's
was
right.
always told about the 500 squats to warm up, and they're like, if you can't do that, you can kind of forget about doing this beautiful
Yeah.
sport.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can't
It's
remember
like-
what I saw, but I was there were some Japanese girls training, and they were doing that, like the 500 squat thing. I
Yeah.
was like,
It's legit.
everybody does it. Like it's
Hey,
Yeah.
it's wild, man. Hey David, you got any questions for Chance, brother? You haven't got a chance to say much.
hey. Oh, you've been wrestling as long as I've been down there live. When I looked up your profile, Jesus, the young boy, this thing.
Yeah,
Wow.
99, I think you
Yeah.
you started, yeah.
Yeah.
I
Broke
was-
in May of '99.
Dang.
Man.
Hey, you just wow, you same age as my friend. My friend the same age, same month.
Oh, yeah?
Year. But yeah, so I'll say this: you from this last name, the city of my last name. What the heck is West? What the heck goes down there in my
Logan,
last name
yeah.
city?
Which one? Which one? Point Pleasant or
His
or-
last name is Logan.
My last name.
Yeah.
Is,
oh my shoot hometown of Logan, West Virginia.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what you're built
Ah,
from.
yeah.
That's what he was mentioning, yeah.
It is crazy. Logan's nuts. I'm getting ready to go back there on the 8th for All Star Wrestling.
What?
Nice.
Yeah, February 8th. It's a memorial show for our friend Nathan. It's like they do a big Royal Rumble style match, and
Okay.
they got. I'm looking at the poster now. Got Buff Bagwell's going to be there making an appearance. Then we got
What's that?
tons
What's the stuff?
of guys. Vinny Pacifico is going to be
Yeah.
there.
Mhm.
Ooh.
Okay.
That Casey King guy. Yeah,
That
he'll be
Casey
there.
King guy.
That Casey King guy.
Hey, Casey King is highly entertaining. Squeaky clean.
He'll hug the mess out of you.
Yeah, well, it's so funny when he first started. Him and I were having a conversation about wrestling, and I was kind of like, man, sometimes wrestling makes me sad. Like, there's
Yeah.
some of the personalities in the business just they don't. As a promoter at the time, it's hard dealing with people who you can't tell what their intentions are sometimes.
Yeah.
And
it's
and then Casey was like, you're just surrounding yourself with the wrong people. I love wrestling. Wrestling's fun. And that's literally what he said. And I was like, okay,
Yeah.
man. Right on. Yeah. I don't know.
That's him though.
Yeah, and that was years ago, so I don't know if the attitude is still the same, but I hope it is, man.
Pretty
I
much.
hope it is.
Yeah.
If I could ask a question,
Yes, sir.
how did you get your mother to be okay with you wrestling?
I lied to her for the first 6 months. It's like, where are y'all going? Oh, we're just hanging out, driving 2 hours to Pikeville, Kentucky, to some dude's like garage. Like this guy, it was a wild story. We were doing backyard wrestling, and some guy saw he bought one of our videos off of our Angel Fire website.
Oh,
If you know
man.
what Angel
That's a
Fire is.
reference.
Yeah,
Oh my
Oh, man.
God.
And he hits us up. I'll never forget the name. He said, "My name's John Redfields," and I'm like, "Oh." He said, "I just sold my bike shop and bought a wrestling ring. I saw one of y'all's videos, and if y'all want to learn to beat, I'll let you train." I'm like, "Well, who's going to train us?" He said, "I figure y'all do it yourself." I'm like,
Oh,
"Nah."
Do it yourself.
He
That is
ended up hooking
awesome.
us up with a guy that was doing a little bit of work with HWA. It's all been weird. It's always like there's always some type of connection to Les Thatcher and HWA. But Brian Gilbert and a guy that's since passed, I can't remember his real name. But he was only in there for a minute. But he was one of the guys that first stressed fitness. He's like, you got to be ready to go. And they just started showing us like, hey, you're going to break your neck. Please stop doing this, stop that. And eventually one guy, who's like my real mentor and trainer, Danny Nelson, no relation.
Mhm.
Danny
He,
Ray.
yeah, he saw me at a show, and we were in this weird 3-way match where it was a 3-way ladder match. There was nothing above the ring. It was just
It was just a
Seen
ladder.
those before. There's so what is the
promoter's like, yeah, we're gonna have this 3-way ladder match. I said, for what? He's like, oh, just to see what y'all can do. And I'm like, okay.
So
So
just
how do you win?
It was a 4-way with a ladder in it.
Do you
So the
piss
ladder
him
was
off
the
on
fourth
the
person.
ladder?
It was the ladder was the fourth person.
It won. Like we're doing all this stuff, like doing all these crazy spots, and I hit a hip toss out of nowhere, and apparently that's what caught my guy's eye.
Okay.
And we're after the match. One of my friends got knocked out in the match. It was stupid. We get in the back, and I'm getting a drink, and he's like, "Hey, saw you out there." He said, "Oh my gosh, Danny Ray," because he's like a local guy that's done some good stuff. He was a referee for NWA. He helped train Jamie Noble. So he was like, good stuff out there. I said, what part? He said, I said, when we did that one spot with the ladder in the corner, he's like, no, your hip toss was really good. And I'm like, oh,
There you go.
Old school.
Hey,
old
man.
school. Old school.
he said, if
with.
you stop doing all that stupid stuff, I'll take you on the road. And I'm like, okay.
The
Let's go.
essentials, though, the essentials, the simple
fundamentals.
The
Those are
fundamentals.
fam. It's always
That's-
the fundamentals. Always
That's
When
the
I-
important thing.
When
Yep.
I used to scout wrestlers, man, don't rainbow your clothesline.
Yep.
Don't pick your opponent up off the mat like you're walking through the field with them. And get in the ring and take it with authority. Like those are the freaking 3 things that I would look for.
Yep.
If you didn't do one of those 3 things, or I mean, if you did one of those 3 things wrong, I wouldn't even consider booking you.
Yeah.
As hard as that sounds, man. Like if you take the ring all timid, or if I mean, you know what I'm talking about. But like, there are wrestlers who are not trained properly who will take someone by the hand when they're picking them up off the mat, and it looks like they're going to go for a stroll together. You know,
Well, the biggest thing was Norman
Yeah.
Smiley. Like I was at a tryout, and Norman Smiley, he's like, "You guys pick these guys up by the ears, like you're lifting them up
Yeah,
like magic."
man.
He
Yeah,
said, do you know how much pressure it takes to rip off an ear? It's like 8 pounds. I'm like,
the guy,
oh, never.
the guy who trained me used to say to crank their neck, bring them up like.
Yep.
But either way, like you don't hold their hand. It looks ridiculous, and people still do it. And when I
Oh,
see
come
people
on.
do it, when I see people do it, I lose it. It's so bad.
My big beef is when people are in the corner, they're getting ready to get shot off, and they hand their opponent their hand, and I'm like,
Oh yeah. Any of that stuff in the
Come on.
corner where they're clearly setting it up is so bad. Like,
yeah,
but that's really bad. Just here, take this. It's so bad.
that's my pet
Take
peeve.
me
Don't do that.
Yeah.
Would you say
So-
that's one of the I was gonna say, would you
Oh
say
no, go
that's
ahead, man. Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
would you say that's one of the things you really push to your students as far
Yeah.
as
I
D'Lo's
tell them
sick.
straight up.
No, I was saying.
I tell
I
them
was
straight
gonna
up.
say
I was
about
like, if it
taking
doesn't
on-
look like a fight, I'm not interested.
Yeah.
yeah, the authenticity. It's real. It's an important thing.
And that's one thing you do well, man. I must say, like, your matches look like fights. That's
Mhm.
very.
I apologize a lot afterwards.
Yeah.
I know you have to.
Hey, apologize later. You know what
Always
I'm saying?
ask for
Yeah.
forgiveness, not permission.
Yeah.
Right,
Exactly.
right.
Exactly.
That's what The Rock did when he hit Mankind in the head 7 times, unprotected. Who
Oh.
Speaking of, if we can mention this, I just want to talk about one specific topic that we had, and it would be cool if you were part of it. But have you heard much about the Dark Side of the Ring documentaries, their episodics? So they just
Yeah.
announced season 6.
I know Thunder Kitty's
For real?
pissed about the Daphne episode.
Oh yeah,
Ah,
that's
Yeah,
one.
Thunder Kitty feels like they're not going to treat her well.
she was a
Which, I mean,
sweetheart. They need to stop that.
Yeah. I have a friend who was really good friends with her and was so upset when she passed. He actually met her through horror and filmmaking and stuff.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's if they don't treat that the way that it should be treated, you know, I can see that going badly because people love Daphne, you know.
Yeah, she was great.
Yeah.
She became a friend way back, and like she would go out of her way to make you feel welcome. She always took care of everybody in the ring, and like she got that rough concussion, man, and
Yeah.
it just messed her up for good.
Yeah.
It's sad.
It's gonna mess with TNA too because it's gonna make them look like absolute jerks.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, if they use it to raise CTE awareness and that kind of thing, I mean, she did say that when she passed, she wanted them to study her brain to try to figure stuff out. You know,
Yeah.
Yeah,
I just hope they do it respectfully. You know, I
Same.
hope they don't exploit it. I mean,
well, that was during
sometimes
her
that
live
show
stream.
definitely comes off. Sometimes that show definitely comes off exploitive. So
Yeah.
I would hope not. One thing that's interesting though is that one of Keith's favorite wrestlers of all time, actually, what he says his favorite wrestler, Hot Stuff, is going to be on it.
Eddie Gilbert is my favorite wrestler.
Oh,
of all
yeah?
time.
Yeah, Hot
Oh
Stuff
yeah, I
is going to
love
be
Eddie
on
Gilbert.
there.
That'll be interesting.
Mhm.
He did the first ever shoot interview.
Yeah.
Eddie Gilbert had such a crazy life, man. I mean, if you think about it, he was a golden boy, and then he got in that car accident. You know, they used it in Angle. Bob Backlund trained him, and you know, whatever, got him. And then he had to grow a beard to cover the scar, and he got self-conscious about that. He was self-conscious about being so small. One of the greatest minds, though, Tony Myers said that Eddie Gilbert just had journals and journals, and he would just walk around just thinking of angles and coming up with gimmicks and writing it all down, you know? And as much as everybody wants to talk about how Paul Heyman is a genius, and sure, Eddie Gilbert said, I want to bring the Southern style of booking to the North,
Yeah.
and started ECW with Todd Gordon. You know, that was Eddie Gilbert, man. And him and Paulie, he'd known Paulie since Paulie was a kid, and Paulie was under his wing. So if it wasn't for Eddie Gilbert, maybe we don't get Paulie Dangerously.
Yeah.
And dude, my favorite match of all time, as far as psychology, is the match that he had with Buff Bagwell when he won the TV title from him without even pinning him, the global TV title.
That's cool.
Yeah, it was just such a good match. It's only like 11 minutes long. Like if you've got 11 minutes, look up Eddie Gilbert versus Handsome Stranger. It's on YouTube like 3 different times and watch that match. I don't even want to ruin it, but Raven's involved in it too. So anytime you get those two guys together, man, such a good match. And every time someone's like, what should I study? You know, and I'm like, this. I send them that. You know, I'm not sending them. It's just simple. It's 10 minutes. It's simple. Heel baby face.
In that regard, Chance, do you have any matches in your head, in your big Rolodex of matches, that you would say is the quintessential, like one that you feel as if is almost the ideal match as far as like psychology, as far as moves, as far as, you know, pacing, all of that? Is there one that you tell your students, like if you're going to study something or somebody even, is there something that comes to mind?
Not one single match, but always, because they're like, I always get the complaints, I can't be a babyface, I can't do this. I was like, well, have you studied what a babyface is? So I point out like Ricky Morton, old Shawn Michaels, pretty much. He was carbon copy of the Rockers, him and Marty, or carbon copy of the Rock and Roll Express. But and then I tell them to look for guys like I'm drawing a blank. As far as heels go, I like look for Gary Hart. And they're like, he's not a wrestler. I said, exactly. He was a wrestler though. Like not that great, but like as a manager, I'm like dastardly. And then they're like, well, what about Flair? I was like, study Jackie Fargo. But like, I like to give those off references, because if you don't know why we do what we do and the ones that actually made it work, like you don't get it.
Yeah, nobody sold for sympathy better than Ricky Steamboat and Ricky Morton and Ricky Steamboat both looked like they were gonna die every time, you know, and the crowd would just be like, "Don't die!" It was so good. Like, I think that a lot of that is missing from wrestling now. You know, people are concentrating on moves and not concentrating on emotions. So
we just had this discussion at training last night.
Nice.
It was like, so I told him, I was like, I can watch tennis, but unless someone's screaming when they're serving, I don't care. I said, if there's no sign of effort or no audible
passion,
I'm not involved. Yeah,
for sure. So, Royal Rumble's coming up this weekend. I've never really understood why, but a lot of promoters like to counter program and sort of I guess work the Rumble into their events. Do you have anything coming up this weekend for the Rumble or anything?
So we've got the Nathan Rumble on the 8th, but as far as this weekend, I'm not doing anything on that. And I just don't believe in it. I run shows sometimes too, and if I know that there's a pay-per-view, I'm like, why would they come see us when they can sit at home comfortably?
I mean, it's smart. Yeah, it's smart. I've seen promoters who run who run like they'll show the pay-per-view. Like you buy a ticket to their show and you get to like see the pay-per-view after and stuff like that. Like they'll run early. And I've never really I don't know if it works. One time I accidentally booked a show the same night as All In, and it was also the premiere weekend of the Avengers, one of the Avengers movies, maybe Endgame.
Oh, dude.
Yeah, 6 people showed up, like legitimately. It was the worst crowd I've ever drawn. and it was like a freaking snowstorm too. So like
Yeah.
I was done. Like there was no way anyone was coming to my show. but,
That's a triple win.
I can say that everybody went out there and did their best, and that's But I booked my shows way ahead of time. All In just kind of popped up out of nowhere. You know what I mean? So
It's
Mm.
it was
so
All In
weird
and
when
the
you got all
Avengers.
that money, you can do whatever you want to do. It's just like, we're gonna pop a pay-per-view up now.
Yeah. And it was like the biggest indie show of all time.
Yeah.
Freaking no one was, and it was in Chicago. Chicago's 3 hours away from me. No one was freaking coming to Connorsville, Indiana to watch an indie show. Like, it was not happening.
Oh my
But
Yeah.
like if I'm getting on the road, I'm going to Chicago. Yeah,
Right.
it's rough.
Yeah, it happens, man. No biggie. Still had a good show. So
So if I could preface it, it's the Nathan Rumble is on All Star Wrestling. It's the event is called My Bloody Valentine? Is that what it's called?
Yeah. My Bloody
Okay.
Valentine. I think this is their second one that they've done on
Mhm.
towards Valentine's Day. But they always incorporate Nathan he was a huge fan, but he was also one of the commentators there. Really
Mhm.
good personality. I'd known him since he was a kid. He was just he loved to be a part of wrestling. Really good friend of Casey King's too, but like just tragic. Like
Yeah.
literally, we're at an event for ASW, talking to him, catching up, starts talking about how he just feels weird, like kind of nauseous, and
Mhm.
then passes away in his sleep of a massive heart attack. And
man,
like in his 30s.
It's
That's
yeah,
hard.
I remember a very good friend of mine that I actually used to teach at the boxing gym that we ended up naming an award after him. The guy was such a good, good-hearted person, but he came in and he was but I also remember I still have that text message saved. He's like, "Oh, I've never felt this bad, but I have already taken so many sick days that I can't like afford to miss work," and then just never woke up.
Man.
Okay, and this is
Man.
going to be in Logan, West Virginia. Yeah.
Yeah.
My
Yeah.
last name.
So everybody that's listening, please, if you can check it out and give love to our fallen members of our community, of our
Yeah.
growing
Rest in peace,
and
folks.
ever growing wrestling community.
yes, sir.
Mm.
We
So
I got one last question for you, Chance.
Yes,
If
sir.
Triple H gave you the call, was like, "Hey, Chance, we would like for you to be in the Rumble," saying, how would you feel about that? What would you say?
How quick can I catch a flight? Let's go.
yeah. Hey, speaking of that, I'm sure you know Flash Flanagan.
Yeah, I know. I saw that.
Yeah, he was campaigning ever since they announced it to be in the Rumble. He even did some backstage
Yeah.
stuff, and it's looking now like he's not going to be, unfortunately. But I'm hoping he's
sucks.
working. I mean, the dude is, as far as modern times go, man, he's the Indiana guy.
Dude, Flash was so hot back in like OVW, early OVW
Oh
days.
man, he wrestled everybody.
Ah,
Yeah.
and he could go
Yeah.
he could go before it was popular. And I'm just like, this big dude's doing all this, and I thought for sure he'd get the call up.
Yeah.
I thought for sure he'd get the call up.
Like I said, I hope he's working and he's actually going to be in the Rumble. If he's not, they missed it. They missed an opportunity, dude. That pop,
Yeah.
man. When Flash is like, he was a doctor, I think, on one episode of Raw, and freaking,
Yep.
it was all over the place. People were like, people in Indiana, wrestling fans in Indiana love Flash Flanagan. I don't think people really understand. I mean, because
Huge.
dude,
He's huge.
yeah. Even when he, was living in Puerto Rico and whatnot, he would still come back to Indiana and wrestle every once in a while. He has, it's where he lives. So like he's always been a home state guy, and people freaking love him here. So I'm hoping he shows up. But like I said, if he doesn't, it's a missed opportunity. He's still in great shape. Dude's 50, in great shape. Like, I don't know. And he probably, I know he hasn't taken many bookings lately, so I don't know. To me, it would have just made sense for them to do
it'd
it.
been a good over getting that type of, even if it's just a little bit, like,
Yeah.
and it just solidifies like all. That's the big thing about it. Even if like say how we was talking about, if I get that call and it's like, hey, show
Yeah.
up, like it just caps it. It's like, okay, I've been there, done that, and they finally honored me on that. That's like that would be it.
Yeah.
Like,
100%, man.
okay, I can ride off into the sunset and just ease off, which
Yeah.
I'm never going to retire because I already know what happens when
Mm.
everybody retires. But 2 weeks later, they're buying new boots, got new gear,
Yeah. Yeah.
got that itch,
The amount
brother.
of people who have, I,
Like
I,
that.
I've known people who have retired from like, so Drew Skills got a torn ACL.
Yep.
It was ripped out basically. Like it was so bad that they had to
Mm.
replace it with a dead guy's ACL.
That's
Like
what
it
I
was
got
gone.
too.
Hey,
Yeah.
see, and he
And that
retired.
club.
He retired, and
Jeez.
I think he was back in less than 2 years.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's
When
just
they did that I ended up for the first 17 years of my career, I didn't know it because I got diagnosed with a torn meniscus out of high school wrestling. They're
mm,
like, you should be good, rehab it, da 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 da. Well, come to find out, like when I'm 39 years old, because my knee keeps going out, and I'm like, I've had it checked out, and no one said anything. They did an MRI. They're like, oh, you don't have an MCL or an AC, or no, I had the MCL, ACL, and PCL non-existent. And I'm like,
man,
for what? They're like, yeah,
Non-existent.
non-existent.
yeah.
You've got the consistency of oatmeal in your knee. And I'm
What?
like, what?
So your
Ew.
It's like,
kneecap
yeah,
just kind of
Ew.
wow,
Jeez.
man. I mean, I've known guys and girls who have uh had torn ACLs, torn MCLs, whatever, and they just throw on braces.
yeah.
Dude,
That's
Victoria
all I
did
did
that.
too.
Yeah, Victoria
Yeah.
wore a brace before and she was on TV. You know, she wore a brace until she could get surgery.
Yeah.
She didn't want to take time off. Uh,
Same.
it's wild, man. Like I guess
Because you
when you're
take
in there,
time off, everybody passes you up.
yeah, they forget about you. Yeah, yeah.
I have a very obscure question. Why weren't you the one tied up in the back with John Moxley instead of Ricky Morton and with the Rock and Roll Express were tied up in the back of the AEW? Did they
Yeah.
not call you up to do something with you?
Nope. Nope.
No?
The one opportunity I had to work with AEW was back in March of, let me
Ooh.
think. It was 2 years ago. Yeah, because I was going with my son. We were taking a trip over to Israel, and they called and said, "Hey, we've got a tryout on this date." And I'm like, "I'm going to be in Israel."
Mm,
That's not what they wanted to hear either. I'm like, it's
yeah,
a missions trip. I can't, and it's time with my son. I really can't pass this up. He's only going to be this age, this time, like one time. So they said, "Oh,
yeah.
it's okay. We'll catch back up with you." I haven't got an email since. So
Damn.
Man.
Nice to
yeah,
hear
So
just
about the missions trip. Nice to hear.
yeah, so I
yeah,
know
It's
we're
important.
hitting 1:30. We've been talking for about 45 minutes. We got the regular program stuff to do, but every single time something gets brought up, it makes me think of another question because man, you've been around for so long and so much. But you talked about the AEW thing. Didn't you do a TNA a gut check too at one point?
yeah. And man, I was right up there in the top. And then
Yeah,
over like the course of 3 hours, like some ungodly amount of votes came in. And I'm like, okay.
yeah, that's what happens, man. I thought you were one of those guys. I remember you and Facade being
Yep,
in there for
neck and
people to
neck.
vote for. Yeah, yeah. And I don't
And we
think
were
either one of you
helping
guys
each
ended
other
up
out.
winning, right? I don't think either one
It
of you guys ended
was
up winning.
it was the
Damn.
guy that just passed away, John Bone or what was it?
Mm.
Bad Bones.
Oh,
Bad
sure, Mads
Robert.
Kruger. Yeah.
Yep.
Mm.
Oh man.
But
Well, I mean, hey,
Okay.
if you're gonna lose to somebody, he's
yeah,
pretty darn good. But
good
yeah,
dude.
I remember you and Facade were like, one of them is gonna win, and then all of a sudden, neither one of you guys won. I was like,
Yeah, it's
what
like what the
happened?
heck?
Yeah, yeah. And so you mentioned going on a mission with your son.
Mhm.
I know that I think okay, so we were friends on Facebook for years. And then somehow we stopped being friends on Facebook. I think your Facebook was deactivated for a little while or something a while ago, like
Yeah.
a long time ago, and that's how we ended up not being friends. But um, I know from your Facebook posts and things like that your religion is pretty important to you.
Yes, sir.
So how do you reconcile that with the Chance Prophet character, with the pro wrestling world, with the entertainment world in general? Like, how does all that fit together?
Yeah, with the Christians.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm.
it's fun. Like when
Nice.
when I first started, I had deacon board. The deacon board took me off to the side of the church I was raised in. It's like, so we hear you're going to be a wrestler. We don't think that's good. We don't think that's a good representation of the church. I said, where did Jesus go? I'm like, I'm going to be out where people are that won't go to church are going to be there.
Yeah.
And it's always gone hand in hand. Like people have needs, and
Oh,
half the time it happens when I'm at the merch table. People will come up and I'm like, oh, you want to buy something? It's like, no, I want to talk to you about prayer. I need prayer on this. And I'm like, okay, let's go. So
That's awesome,
That's
man.
nice to hear.
Yeah, that's killer.
but
Yeah.
when it comes to the visual and then that's when I'm like, okay, that's when you know faith is bigger than who you are and God is bigger than who you are, because for him to work with me looking the way I look
Yeah.
and doing the things that I do, and people are just like, okay, curtain down, I got to handle this need. Can you help me? And then I
Yeah.
like seeing the puzzled look from the people that were just booing me and cussing me out to see me sitting there praying for somebody. And they're like, oh man, I'm sorry.
That's awesome. Yeah.
The dark child is the child of God.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
That's a beautiful thing, though.
It's awesome.
Yes, sir. And my pastor that I'm under, I'm a pastor too. At our church, I pastor like the 25s through 40-year-olds. But our senior pastor, he's like, for some reason, he thinks I'm a luchador. He says, Chance, Joey wears a really awesome mask to the ring. I'm like, it's paint, but okay.
That's take that as a compliment.
I
Yeah,
do.
hey.
Like, and he puts it over more than anybody else. And he's like,
That's
Joey's
awesome.
a wrestler. Joey's does this. That's
Man.
Chance Prophet. And I'm like, yeah, keep saying it. Keep saying it. Get me over.
Get some people out there, yeah.
See some merch in the church.
Yeah.
It
Speaking
happens.
of lucha, I saw Penta work right on Raw, and I was like, "Has that ever happened before?" I was
Oh my
like-
gosh,
man.
it's beautiful.
I was like, "Whoa, what is going on?" Like, yeah,
Dusty Rhodes is somewhere up in heaven going, see, baby, we can do anything. We can do anything as long as the camera's rolling.
yeah. I talked about it on the podcast. I was like, "Man, did you?" He was switching back and forth. He was working both sides. I was like, "Man, that's something."
I had my first match for CMLL this year too, which was weird.
Nice.
So I went down there and I'm like, y'all are working on the left. Y'all are lying to everybody up in the north.
Maybe they were just doing it for you.
Well, they were like, no, we're trying to get stateside. We want to work.
Nice.
We want to work
Yeah.
up stateside.
Also, I was gonna say,
Yeah.
I had seen something about your. You already mentioned her, but how do you pronounce it? Micah or Mika?
Yeah, Micah. Yeah,
She
Micah.
worked last year in CMLL, didn't she?
Yeah. She was in like
Yeah, she's making it around, man.
six woman
Yeah.
with Tessa Blanchard. Tessa just got called up,
Mm-hmm.
which there's stuff going around right now about Tessa about saying she was screaming at girls in the back. Tessa's like, I've known her since she was a kid. I know what's
Yeah.
going on out there. I know the backstory, but Tessa's loved down there. Tessa's absolutely loved. She's a baby doll.
Okay.
And I know who the stuff came out with, and it shocked me because I know both of them. I used to work with La Rosa down in Florida. I never would have thought they would have butted heads at all.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
is crazy.
It happens.
Math
Yeah.
is mathing
happen.
up.
It's a heat magnet.
Things happen.
Yeah.
Yep.
It'll be interesting to see what
Sometimes
happens.
Sometimes
with TNA
personalities
now.
don't.
I think she's going to be on top again in TNA, and Jordan Grace is. I already called it. I don't know if you want to make a prediction, but I called Jordan Grace winning the Royal Rumble as soon as I saw her walk into TNA that NXT that one day.
Yeah,
The
you
fact
did. You
that
said that a long
she's
time ago.
signed right now, like
Yeah.
she better get like top 5.
Push to
I know
the
she's
moon.
trying to. According to rumors on the internet, is she's pushing for a Worlds Collide pay per view.
And she wants an Ultimate X in WrestleMania. She said as
Yeah.
well.
So that'd
That'd be
be
awesome.
That'd be huge.
Possibility.
yeah. That whole thing would be
Ultimate
fun, man.
Ultimate X meshed with Money in the Bank.
Yeah, definitely. Didn't
Oh,
the Ultimate X start in Puerto Rico? I feel like IWA started the Ultimate X. They didn't call it
Yeah.
that, obviously, but yeah. It's funny how it's like a TNA signature match, and then IWA actually started it. Like wrestling, man, the ideas always come from places you
Yeah.
never even think of. You
yeah,
know?
that's it. Oh, by the way, I wanted to mention we just got the text, but Brent the Nightmare Ward says that he's sorry that he couldn't be there, and he wanted to say hello to you, Chance, and that he's sorry
He's out
he couldn't
roofing
make
in the
it.
rain.
Roofing
Yeah.
in the rain.
Oh,
Yeah.
He's all
that's
bad.
horrible.
Yeah, man. That's why he
Doing-
couldn't be on
yeah.
the show. So
Doing
that
what
was
you
the
gotta
guy
do.
who initially got a hold of you. Yeah,
That's absolutely horrible. Bless you, dude.
for sure.
Yes, yeah.
All right. So you guys wanna wrap the interview up real quick? Just Chance, if there's anything you wanna talk about before we hop off with you.
Yes. Support your local indies, support pro wrestling. Anytime you can get a chance to go to an indie before you go to a corporate, go to an indie because you never know who's going to pop up. I mean, that background right there, Joe Hendry. Look at him. Look at him. Say his name,
WCBW
then he
legend.
appears.
That's my prediction. I
Progress.
think Joe Hendry's winning the Rumble. Probably the only person in the country who does, but
If it ain't him, it's going to be.
yeah, but I think they're gonna stretch the John Cena stuff out. I think he's gonna might win Money in the Bank, might win Elimination Chamber, but I don't think he's winning the Rumble.
What I think is that, first of all, I have to mention Chance that
Chance Prophet's getting in on our Royal Rumble predictions.
Keith's gimmick is that he's always wrong.
Yeah.
Especially
It's not
for
really my
pay-per-views.
gimmick, man.
It is your gimmick, King.
It's
So-
not.
I'm sorry to say, no current TNA champion. I believe that Joe Hendry is going to throw out John Cena, though.
Well, did you see what Joe Hendry just said though a couple days ago?
Yeah.
He's been in the Royal Rumble twice, but back then he was just a wrestler. Now he's the TNA champion, and he will only be in the Royal Rumble if he's doing something that serves TNA, like winning it.
Or
Like,
like
that's-
or like being number 2 and having the biggest pop in Royal Rumble history.
Yeah,
Aside from
yeah.
aside from maybe
Cena.
the surprise from
Sure.
AJ Styles or that one year John Cena came
Yeah.
out 30.
Or
Yeah.
And Cena's going to jump over to TNA, take the world title, bring it back.
Oh man,
God.
And then it's all circling back to him
That'd be
against Nick
wild.
Nemeth. Him
Yeah.
against Nick
AJ
Nemeth.
overcomes the foot injury, takes it from Cena. They have a crazy rivalry, and then
Oh, man.
Shinsuke wins it all.
There you go.
One-legged
All right.
AJ Styles.
Shinsuke on top, baby. Who would have predicted that?
Maybe me 4 years ago, but
I'm glad Corey Jade is actually winning some matches.
Corey.
Not in the
Yeah.
WWE, but she's
She's good.
yeah.
I like her going
Yeah.
against Masha.
I remember her on the Indies because she's from Chicago and she worked as or the Chicago area. She wrestled in Chicago a lot as Elena Black, I think was her name.
Yes.
And I remember seeing her and I was like, man, this girl is special. Like back then, so obviously
That's
I wasn't
like-
the only person who thought so.
Like
Yeah.
another Chicago girl, Sky Blue. We booked her
Yeah,
right before she
Dude.
blew up. My lord.
Yeah.
She's
Man.
talented,
She
sweet.
blew up.
Like, she
Yeah.
blew up big.
Yeah. I saw Sky Blue on was it Chicago Style that she was working at a lot, I think.
Yep.
Yeah, I saw her down there quite a few times, and I was just like, man, yeah, this girl, she's just, you could tell when some people connect with the fans. I think that's the
Yep.
biggest thing. And she connected with the fans, man, and she's been doing it since she was like 17. She started a little early, so
Yeah.
good for her, man.
Well, I was
Hopefully
booking
it
at
comes back
IW
to you.
East Coast and was like, I said, I reached out. I didn't want to seem like a creepy, like 40-year-old. Hey, what's going on? But I said, hey, I would like to put you in a match that you probably wouldn't get anywhere else. So I said, how would you like to work with Mickey Knuckles?
Oh, nice.
And it was so like polar opposites. It worked so
Yeah.
well.
That's
and then-
awesome.
she just started picking up. I'm like, man, it's
I
good to see good
remember,
people get it.
yeah, I remember talking to Apollo about her.
Mhm.
And I was still running at the time, and I was talking about bringing her in. And he was like, "Man, you're gonna throw $1 million at this girl, aren't you?" And I was like, "No." I was like, "But I mean, something's gonna happen." I was like, "Something's gonna happen, dude." And I think we should use her. I always talk
Yep.
to Q because he's known, he's been around forever. So, um, and then I think it was like it was not very much shorter after that she started getting featured on AEW, and then she got the contract. So
Yeah.
like, yeah, I mean, you could tell, like, it was just pretty obvious that something was going to happen with her, especially
Mhm.
towards the end, right before she got in there. She was, but yeah,
This was a great
this was fun.
conversation.
Yeah, yeah,
Definitely
fun.
appreciate you having you join us and
Yeah, you're the
grace
first
us.
guest we've had on this podcast, so
For real.
yeah, first
And
guest
not
from in
hold
the
on.
wrestling business, anyway. Yeah,
That's cool.
yeah, this was awesome, man. It's usually just us blabbering about what we think is going to happen and our opinions on stuff,
And
and
you can tell we
yeah.
blab. You can tell
Yeah,
we
Oh,
blab.
that's what we do.
I fit right in. I get in trouble a lot.
Yeah.
First in, last one out. Not because I'm on the main event, but because I'm
Oh,
talking to
brother,
everybody.
That's the
dude.
beautiful
Yeah,
thing about it, man.
some of the guys on my roster, I got to be pretty good friends with, man, and we would literally sit around till 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, just hanging out in the locker room and talking. Especially when I had my own building and we didn't have to leave.
Oh yeah.
Man, and wives, dude. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Are you coming home?
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of my best friends, his wife would do his merch, and she'd be like, "I don't want you taking bookings from Keith anymore. You are there forever." It's just like happens, man. Get to talking, especially about wrestling or anything you really care about, And it's,
Yeah.
We can
Be
definitely tell
passionate
the
about it.
passion. We can definitely
Yeah.
tell the passion on your end too, and we appreciate it.
for sure.
Sure.
All right, Chance. Well, man, thank you so much for coming on. Like Chance said, everybody get out there and support your local indies. If you see Chance Profit on a flyer, definitely head out.
Yeah.
For
Come
sure.
see
You
me.
will get your money's worth, man. But have a good one, brother.
You too, guys.
Appreciate you.
All right. Take care, man. Thank you.
God bless.
Adios.
God bless.
God bless.